Before diving into this incredible story, consider subscribing to the channel and hitting the bell. Every story here has something to say, and you won't want to miss a single one. The bully made fun of the bad boy. But 10 seconds later, he was begging for help. An American story inspired by stories of bullying, redemption, and inner courage. As Jefferson High School, in the south suburbs of Chicago, the corridors were not only places of passage. They were hunting grounds every day. Between the dented metal lockers and yellowed school posters, a silent dance of power, fear, and domination played out. And in this ruthless ecosystem, Chase Donovan reigned supreme. Undisputed captain of the football team, 1.90 m of gym-honed muscles, with his expertly tousled blonde locks and Hollywood movie-esque square jaw, Chase was what many teachers admiringly called a natural-born leader. But the students knew his true nature. Chase was not only popular, he was untouchable. And he knew it. He didn't need to raise his fist to hurt. A sharp remark about your appearance. A humiliating joke in the middle of class. A fake text message sent from your stolen phone. A simple glance was enough to shatter the self-esteem of an already fragile teenager. And when he struck, because it happened sometimes, he did it in blind spots, between two cameras, or in the locker rooms, where the walls had no ears. He had perfected the art of doing harm without getting your hands dirty. The teachers? Some looked away, afraid of losing their control in the gym. Others, seduced by his charisma and athletic achievements, preferred to believe in appearances. The students? Some laughed at his jokes, hoping to be spared. Others looked down, praying they wouldn't become his target. A large majority lived in a form of complicit silence, fear in my stomach, a lump in my throat. It was an unwritten law, carved into the walls, never challenges Chase Donovan. But in this realm of shifty glances and forced smiles, a student went unnoticed. Logan Carter. Sitting alone at the back of the class, still wearing an oversized sweatshirt and faded jeans, Logan hardly spoke to anyone. Tousled brown hair, round, slightly striped glasses, a bag always too heavy on his back, he seemed to float in the school like a quiet ghost. He had a routine: arrive early, sit by the window, draw or read in silence. No high-tech cell phone. No noisy friends. No unnecessary interactions. Some ignored him. Others whispered that he was weird, in his own world, or even a little creepy. But no one really cared. He was not neither a threat nor an interesting prey. And yet, he carried within him a force that no one suspected. Every morning, at 5:30 sharp, Logan left his room in the small apartment he shared with his grandfather, Samuel Carter, a former Special Forces soldier. No tick-tock. No music in your ears. Just silence, and the discipline of a ritual passed down from childhood. In a garage converted into a dojo, lit by a single bare light bulb, Logan trained. He tirelessly repeated the same movements, the same techniques. Jiu-jitsu for flexibility. Krav Maga for responsiveness. Taekwondo for balance and meditation, always, for the mind. He didn't train to hurt. His grandfather had taught him that from day one. Fighting is what you do when you've lost. A true warrior doesn't need violence. He controls himself, he observes, he endures. Until the enemy exhausts himself. And Logan had endured. For years, he had endured the mockery, the petty aggression, the whispered remarks in the hallways. He knew how to dodge without responding. He knew how to breathe deeply when humiliation burned in his throat. He knew remain invisible. But that morning, something had changed. The day before, his grandfather had looked him straight in the eyes during their training, and said in a slow voice, "You can dodge it all your life, Logan. But one day the time will come when you will have to stand up straight, not for you, but for what you represent." Logan had nodded. He hadn't answered. But as he went to bed that night, he felt a flutter in his stomach, like a storm waking up. And that morning, in the halls of Jefferson High, as Chase Donovan was walking towards him, with that cruel smile on his lips, Logan knew. The time had come. And Tuesday morning, gray and warm like so many others, the Jefferson High cafeteria was bustling with activity. The trays clattered, voices mingled, and discussions swirled around the banalities of the previous evening: Friday's game, hallway gossip, overly strict teachers. The background noise was constant, noisy, almost suffocating. Logan Carter, he was in his usual place. At the back, against the wall, table N degree 23, just below the large clock that made a regular, hypnotic noise. Tick. Tock. Tick. Tock. Like every day, he sat alone, a buttered sandwich wrapped in wax paper, a green apple, and his Moleskine notebook open before him. He drew a forest scene, without thinking about it. It was one of those places he liked to imagine, far away. Calm. Pure. He was sinking into the silence of his mind, when a ombre massive came to darken his table. And everything froze. Chase Donovan. Standing in front of him, flanked by his two sidekicks, Kyle, with his stupid laugh, and Trevor, with his blank stare, he displayed his favorite smile, that of the predator who has smelled easy prey. Well, look who's here. The little Zen monk in his corner. Logan looked up without abruptness. His gaze was calm. Deep. Unfathomable that he didn't move. But Chase moved. A sharp blow. Brutal. Logan's tray was knocked over. The apple rolled to the floor. The sandwich was crushed. Juice stained his notebook. And fat laugh burst into the crowd who were already observing the scene from afar. Oops. The little artist dropped his snack. Trevor burst out laughing. Kyle slapped his thigh. Other students around him laughed out of reflex, out of panic, out of cowardice. More Logan says nothing. He bent down slowly to pick up his notebook, the paper stained but intact. Are you going to cry now? Are you going to call your mom? Chase insisted, coming closer. The laughter redoubled. But that day, something had changed. Logan slowly raised his head. His gaze wasn't blank. He wasn't scared. He wasn't humiliated. He was firm. Silent. Whole. A man's look, not a teenager's. A look Chase didn't understand. Chase, leave me alone. I don't want any trouble. Logan's voice was steady, low, clear. It hadn't wavered. But to Chase's ears, it was a provocation. Because in his head, any word without fear equals affront. Too late for that, faggot. And suddenly, everything accelerated. He pushed him. Once. Logan took a step back. He pushed him again. Harder. Logan falters, but remains devout. Chase clenched his fists. He raised his arm to strike. And then. 10 seconds. That's all it took. Logan barely straightened, pivoted on his back leg, grabbed Chase's wrist with a surgical precision, and with a fluid movement, turned it over with a circular key. Chase, surprised and unbalanced, fell forward. Boom. He crashed to the ground, flat on his back, like a sandbag. His companions didn't even have time to react. The entire cafeteria froze. A deathly silence. Then, the cell phones came out. Slow, mechanical, like silent witnesses. The cameras were filming. Chase growled. Furious. Reddened with anger, with humiliation. He jumped upright. You kind of. He threw a punch. Logan he dodges it with a simple step. A second one. Logan crouched down and got up on the other side. A third. Logan raised his arm, turned his fist away, and median internal rotation. Chase's body followed suit. Then, without violence, without a word, Logan stepped forward, put simply his hand on Chase's shoulder, and pressed. Chase fell to his knees. Logan didn't scream. He didn't triumph. He held Chase in a perfect control position, the one we teach for neutralize without harming. He wasn't trembling. His breathing was calm. His face, peaceful. He could have crushed it. But he didn't. That's enough, Chase. You're not fighting me. His voice cut through the silence like a ray of light through a dirty window. Chase, panting, humiliated, his face red and trembling, tried to regain his dignity. But he had no more weapons. No more laughter. No more audience. Nothing. Let go of me, please. I'm sorry. And in his eyes, there was nothing but naked fear. The videos circulate at breakneck speed. Before the end of day bell even rang, the students at Jefferson High had only the same topic of conversation. Logan Carter had brought Chase Donovan to his knees, without a single punch. In the hours that followed, the scene was everywhere, on Instagram, Snapchat, TikTok, Reddit. Slow-motion replays, montages with epic music, heated comments. Some students, who had been silent until then, published testimonies. I saw Chase throw a student into a locker last year. He never got punished. Logan put him in his place without hate. He's my hero. This guy did in 10 seconds what the administration never dared to do. But it wasn't strength that fascinated people. What shocked, impressed, upset, it was Logan's absolute mastery. His lack of rage. His calm. His gaze almost empathetic, even though he could have crushed the one who had humiliated him for years. The next morning, Logan was summoned to the principal's office, Mr. Reynolds. He went there without haste, with the same humble and discreet attitude as always. When he entered, the principal was waiting for him, accompanied by the school counselor and 2 other teachers. There was a long silence. Mr. Reynolds stared at him, arms crossed. Logan, you know why you're here. The young man nodded in agreement. The director sighed, then pressed a button on the remote control. A video appeared on the screen on the wall. The one everyone had seen. The one where Logan held Chase down with the gentleness of a monk and the precision of a surgeon. They watched the sequence in silence. Then Mr. Reynolds turned to him. You disarmed a violent student, without hurting him. That's not violence. That's wisdom. He paused, then added. You could have humiliated him. You didn't. You could have hit him. You overpowered him. Jefferson High needs kids like you. The advisor nodded. That's why we would like to offer you something. What Logan was offered was not a reward. It was not a medal or a trophy. It was a responsibility. He was asked to create a self-defense and conflict management workshop, open to all students. A space where young people could learn not only to defend themselves physically, but also to build oneself mentally, has regained control of their own dignity. Logan thought. For a long time. Then, calmly, he said. I'm willing to do it. But on one condition. Which one? Asked the director. I want everyone to be able to come. Even Chase. The silence was long. The school counselor frowned. But Mr. Reynolds smiled slowly. All right. In the following days, Chase did not reappear. He had disappeared. Some said he was sick. Others whispered that he had locked himself away in his house. Rumors were rife. But the truth was simpler, he was ashamed. Ashamed of what he had done. Ashamed of what he had become. And above all, for the first time in his life, he had been afraid. Not afraid of another boy. But afraid of what that fear revealed in him. For a week he didn't leave his house. He had read the comments under the videos. Seen the mockery. The edits. The hashtags. Hashtag Justice pour les silencieux. Hashtag Loganelmater. Hashtag ChaseGenX. For the boy who had built his entire reputation on control, this was a dizzying fall. When Chase returned a week later, he was unrecognizable. His gait was no longer arrogant. His eyes avoided stares. He was no longer wearing his football team jacket. And he didn't laugh anymore. No more jokes. No more provocations. Just a heavy, uncomfortable silence. The students looked at him with astonishment, some with contempt, others with pity. But he said nothing. They finally bore the weight of his actions. 3 weeks later, in the gymnasium transformed into school dojo, Logan led the workshop he had been assigned. There were about 15 of them, discreet young people, victims of harassment, a few curious people, but also 2 former torturers who came to understand. The floor was covered with gray carpet. Silence was respected. Logan's calm voice guided the movements, postures, and breathing. And one afternoon, as the setting sun bathed the room in a golden light, Chase appeared. He stood still at the entrance. Nobody had invited him. No one expected to see him there. But Logan just looked at him and nodded. During 3 sessions Chase came. He didn't speak. He didn't move. He sat in a corner, watching silently. Then one day after the session, while everyone was putting away the mats, he quietly approached Logan. Her eyes were wet. His voice was trembling. "Why didn't you hit me? You could have humiliated me, like I did to you." Logan stopped, gently laid down the rug he was carrying, and looked up at him. "Because I didn't want to become like you." There was no hatred, no sarcasm, no reproach in his voice. Just the truth. A long silence followed. Chase bowed his head. Then, in a barely audible voice, he replied, "I don't even know why I started being like this anymore. Maybe I just wanted someone to stop me." And in his eyes, there was no more fear. Nor anger. There was a lost boy, who for the first time had found a wall he could not cross, that of dignity. The weeks passed. Slowly, but surely. The workshop that Logan had created, modest at first, quickly became a sanctuary for many. For those who had suffered in silence for so long, it was a first glimmer of hope. For loners who didn't know how to make a place for themselves, it was a place where their voice mattered. And, more surprisingly, for some former executioners, it was an unexpected opportunity to question their choices, to open their eyes to the pain they had inflicted. Logan, with his infinite patience, calmness and wisdom, guided these young people step by step. He taught them how to breathe, how to defend themselves, but above all how to listen to their own heart, to find that strength which is not measured in muscles, but in dignity. Chase Donovan was not the same. He hadn't transformed overnight. He hadn't become a perfect example. Sometimes old habits resurfaced, a misplaced word, a reflex of arrogance. But he had changed. He had learned to listen to yourself. To recognize one's flaws. To accept one's mistakes. The looks he met in the corridors were no longer challenges, but bridges. In the workshop, he spoke, sometimes hesitantly, but always sincerely. He helped others not to repeat his mistakes. He had become a fragile pillar, a young man in reconstruction. Then came the day when the school held its annual general meeting. The packed gymnasium was bathed in harsh fluorescent light. Parents, teachers, and students were all waiting. At the microphone, Logan was invited to speak. But that day, it was not he who spoke first. Chase took the stage. Silence fell. Their eyes met, curious, incredulous. Chase took a deep breath, searched for words, then said in a clear voice, but trembling with emotion. "Courage is not about being strong. It's about recognizing when you've been weak. It's about having the courage to change, even when no one is looking." A murmur ran through the crowd. Then he added, his eyes shining. "I was the tyrant. I hurt people. But today, I want to make amends. Because I know no one deserves to be afraid." A wave of applause erupted. Chase bowed his head, moved, but at peace. Logan Carter never became a football star. It never made the headlines. He also did not pursue a career in martial arts. But in the halls of Jefferson High, his name was now synonymous with silent power. This quiet boy who had never raised his voice had become a living legend. The legend of a victory without violence, of an inner strength that no one could take away from him. His story was whispered in classrooms. She inspired the new students. She transformed lives. Logan had proven that true power is not measured in blows landed, but in peace won. And above all, he had shown that sometimes, peace is stronger than fear.